Um, the third type is angiosperm vascular plants, and they reproduce with seeds stored in a fruit. And those seeds stored in a fruit would not otherwise survive if they didn't have the fruit surrounding them. The fruit is a nutrient buffet that is portable. It's like a to-go buffet for the seed to keep it alive when it lands in unfavorable conditions, like soil that doesn't have good nutrients perhaps for the young plant, but for the older plant it could survive by digging its roots down to nutritious soil below. Another characteristic of angiosperm vascular plants is that they have flowers that attract pollinators. So they have seeds in a fruit and flowers to attract pollination. And of course there's a diversity of different fruit types and flower types. There's as many different flower types as there are plants, angiosperm plants, and as many different fruits as well. And of course fruits run the gamut from things we don't think of as being fruits, like tomatoes and avocados, all the way to exotic things like star fruits. So what flower parts develop into a fruit? For the maple tree, it could be those things you see there, those twirly-whirlies. Lemons are fruits, as are peas and tomatoes. And if you see a seed inside of something, likely it is a fruit. Even cucumbers. Avocado, yeah. Corn. Yeah. This will be posted online. Shannon. So fruits have seeds, vegetables don't. Yeah. It has a seed in it, it's a fruit. Okay, so this is a flower. You're going to need to memorize the flower parts for a quiz on Friday. I will give you a blank picture of a flower, and you will have to label the parts. So you're going to want to go online and study this. The male parts of a flower are the anther and the filament that make up the stamen. And the female parts of the flower are the stigmastyle and ovary that make up the pistil. And all flowers have petals, and at the base petals are called sepals, or like leaves. And at the base of the ovary there is something called a receptacle. And we'll get into the internal structure of the ovary here in just a sec. Like we saw in gymnosperms, there are ovules inside the ovaries that will then become fertilized. Plants or flowers have male and female parts both. The stamen has anthers that produce pollen, and that pollen lands on a stigma to create a pollen tube that goes down the style to the ovary. Pretty cool. As an adaptation, flowers are super cool. And especially in things like orchids, the flowers are designed to be landing pads for the pollinators. For every different type of flower on an orchid, there's a different insect that's shaped just to fit inside the flower to pollinate another flower when that insect travels to another flower to get some food. So pretty cool. Angiosperm life cycle looks very much like a gymnosperm life cycle, where the cells in the anther produce pollen grains. Inside the ovary, an egg cell is produced in each ovule, and that ovule then, that egg cell inside the ovule will then get fertilized with the sperm. And the pollen tube grows just like it does in angiosperm. And the seeds are developed from the embryo where it has a fruit around it, and that fruit is designed to nourish the young seed. There's two different types of angiosperms. And I want you to know the difference between them. Monocots have one cotyledon. Remember, a cotyledon is like a baby leaf inside the seed. And dicots have two cotyledons. So, very different. And that's where they get their name, monocot and dicot. Mono means one, di means two. The leaves of monocots and dicots are different as well. The parallel veins indicate that it's a monocot. Branching veins indicate it's a dicot. That's a dead giveaway right there. So if you look at a plant that has those parallel veins, you know it's a monocot angiosperm. If it has branching veins, you know that it's a dicot angiosperm. Remember, angiosperms are flowering plants that have seeds encased in a fruit. Okay, the stem of a monocot has vascular bundles scattered throughout the stem, whereas a dicot has bundles of vascular tissue arranged in a ring. And finally, the flowers of a monocot have flower parts in threes, while the flowers of a dicot have flower parts in fours or fives. And that's another dead giveaway too. Okay, roots are super, they look simple, but they're really complex. That starts out with surface cells that have root hairs growing from them. And inside the root, there's both xylem up and phloem down root tissue, or vascular tissue. The cap of the root has dividing cells in it, so all the growth is happening right there at the tip of the root. And the root's main job is to absorb water and nutrients from the soil. Okay? Stems. Stems are the structures where leaves grow. And at the base of a leaf is a node, and right in the crevice where the leaf joins the stem at the node, there is a bud, and that bud can become a flower. Okay? Pretty simple, but important. Yeah? Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can have stems joining on the stems. You bet. Okay, the main structure of a stem, especially this is a typical gymnosperm, a conifer, is to have annual rings, and each ring represents a year, and the rings represent xylem and phloem, and the heartwood is the inside, the old inactive xylem that helps support the tree. Remember, the xylem carries water and nutrients up, and when it gets old, it gets clogged and hardened, and the xylem doesn't work anymore. It's only the outer ring of xylem that's working. The sapwood is the active xylem, right there, that transports water and nutrients up into the plant from the ground. Outside of that is the cambium that produces new phloem and xylem. It's kind of like the marrow of a bone that produces new blood cells. And the inner bark is the living phloem. Okay, so that outer ring there is where the phloem happens. Yeah.
So if you have two rings of bark, could two of them be active at the same time?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's many active at the same time. Many rings active at the same time. And then finally, the outer layer is called the outer bark, and it protects the cells inside. And especially in thick outer bark trees like redwoods, these outer barks can actually help the tree withstand a forest fire. And everything can be on fire, and the bark will get a little singed, but the tree itself will remain unharmed. It's kind of like having a fire protective suit around the plant, the whole life of the plant. It's really cool. We already talked about leaf structure, so I'm going to pass on this other than to say there's two inner layers, an outer waxy cuticle protecting it, and then stoma or holes on the bottom, letting CO2 in and oxygen out. And those guard cells, remember, that surround the